Hare Krishna. Mataji, did you want me to start?
Yes, Mataji, please.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So today we are going to start the chapter 8, which is attaining the Supreme. And so we will get started with our prayers. I want to thank everybody from Bhakti Sangha, specifically Lalitangi Mataji, Sukhasahari Mataji, Preeti Mataji, and Vinita Gandharvika Mataji for kindly providing me this opportunity to talk about chapter 8. And for the Vaishnavas on the call, all of them, I bow down to your lotus feet and seek your blessings so that relevant words may come out of my mouth, so that I speak some topics that are relevant for chapter 8, which is spoken by Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. With that, we can get started with our prayers. One second. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Bhashayata Deshatharine. I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who is dear to the Lord Krishna, having taken shelter at his lotus feet. Our respectful obeisances unto you, O spiritual master, servant of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami. You are kindly preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya Deva and delivering the Western countries, which is filled with impersonalism and voidism. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Nityananda Prabhu, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Pandit, Shivas Thakur, and all devotees of Lord Chaitanya. With this, we will chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. O Krishna, O energy of Krishna, please engage me in your service. Okay, let's get started with our first 4 verses of chapter 8 from Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna Vacha Kim tat brahma kim atyatmam kim karma purushottama adibhutam cha kim proktam adidevam kim uchyate adiyajna katam kotra dehesmin madhusudana prayanakale chakatam neyosi niyatatmabhihi. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Aksharam Brahma Paramam Swabhavotyatmam Uchyate Bhutabhavot Bhavakaro Visarga Karma Samnitaha Adibhutam Sharo Bhava Purushashchadi Dhaivadam Adiyajnyo Hamevatra Dehe Deham Vritamvara. So, if you look at the connection between the 8th chapter and the 7th chapter, Arjuna, we already saw in the last chapter that he was inquiring about Brahman, Adhyatma, Karmam, Adibhutam, Adidaivam, Adiyajna. So in this chapter, we will see that Arjuna is asking these terms from Krishna. Even at the end of the chapter, if you look at the end verses of 7th chapter, you will see these terms. And now Arjuna is asking these terms. What does these terms mean? And Krishna, he is going to describe one by one in the order that Arjuna asks about them. Later in the chapter, Krishna is going to discuss about devotional service that is mixed with yoga. And then he is going to compare and contrast to see how our pure devotional service, that is Suddha Bhakti, is superior to the other yoga systems that we have. And the factors that determine the soul when it leaves the body, that will also be discussed in the chapter 8. So let's look at these terms that Arjuna is asking questions on. So the first one is Brahma. What is Brahma? Krishna, he says, it is nothing but the Jiva. It is the indestructible, transcendental living entity. I'm sorry. That is separate from the material body. So it is nothing but, as you can see, it is nothing but the Jiva, the soul. That is called Brahma. And we all know there is somebody who is superior to Brahma. That is the Jiva. Who's that? Parabrahman. He is the Supreme Lord. And what is Adhyatma? So we all know this Adhyatma means the nature of the Jiva. The Adhyatma, that is the nature of the Jiva, it is such that it wants to serve. Eternally serving is the nature of the Jiva. The constitutional position of the living entity is different from the position it takes in the material world. In the material world, our material consciousness is such that we try to lord the matter, right? Lord it over the matter. But in the spiritual world or in the Krishna conscious position, our nature is to serve nothing but the Supreme Lord. That is Adhyatma. The next term, Karma. What is Karma? When the living entity is in the material consciousness, he has to take various bodies in the material world. We already saw how karma works, right? And depending on the desires and the action we perform, that actually determines the next body. This is called karma or varied creation by the force of material consciousness. Okay, we understood Brahma, what is Adhyatma, what is karma. And now moving on, we are going to discuss what is Adibhuta. Adibhuta is nothing but the Prakriti. This Prakriti is constantly changing the physical world or the material body consisting of the material elements. That is what is Adibhuta. Adibhuta is nothing but the Prakriti. Now, the next question he asks is, what is Adideva? Adideva is nothing but the Virat Purusha, that is the gigantic universal form which includes all the demigods and the different planets. In the Virat Purusha itself, we can see the demigods and the different planets. And what is Adiyajna? Adiyajna is nothing but the Paramatma. I, the enjoyer of all sacrifices, the Supreme Lord, is represented as the Super Soul. We all know the soul and Super Soul are there in the region of the heart, and Paramatma is nothing but the Super Soul, the one whom a Vedic sacrifice is meant to please. We already saw in the 4th chapter that the Vedic sacrifices are meant to please Lord Krishna. And present in the body along with the individual soul is nothing but the Super Soul. So this is so far 6 questions we have seen. The 7th question, what is the Adiyajna known in the body? So we know the Adiyajna is nothing but the Paramatma that is there in the region of the heart along with the individual soul. And as a regulator, he is the one who inspires us in the performance of sacrifice and other acts. And that is how he is seen in the body. And the final question that Arjuna asks is, what is the result if one thinks of Krishna? What is the result if one thinks of Krishna at the time of death? So can you please elaborate me on these? So these are the questions that Arjuna had, and Krishna, he clarified and provided answers for all of them. So first is Brahman, next is Adhyatma, then Karma, then Adibhuta, then Adideva, then Adiyajna. And what is Adiyajna known in the body? That is, he acts as a regulator. He is the one who inspires us to perform the sacrifice and other acts. And finally, what is the status of a person who thinks of Krishna at the time of death? So we will see that these verses, especially point number 8, that is the question number 8, would be clarified in the verses 5 to 8. So we will look in depth and understand what the verses 5 to 8 have to say. So far we have completed 4 verses, that is 1 to 4. These are just the set of questions that Arjuna has asked and Krishna, he has responded. All right. I'm sorry. Okay. So this is the universal form of the Lord, which is seen in the picture here. And now it's a beautiful verse. Srila Prabhupada always quotes this verse. It is 8.5, that is remembering Krishna at the time of death. So let's recite this verse. Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yaprayati samatpavam yati nashtyatra samshayah. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body by remembering me alone at once attains my nature, the supreme destination of this there is no doubt. So let's try to understand this in depth. So Srila Prabhupada here says about remembrance of Krishna is not possible for an impure soul who has not practiced Krishna consciousness in his devotional life. Therefore, he is advising us to practice devotional consciousness, that is Krishna consciousness, from the beginning of our life. If one wants to achieve success at the end, the process of remembering Krishna is very important. Therefore, if we develop this process of Krishna consciousness from the childhood, it is going to be very easy for us to remember Krishna at the time of death. And therefore, one should constantly and incessantly chant the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Lord Krishna, he has advised one to be as tolerant as a tree, Tharorapi Sahishnuna. That is Lord Chaitanya, he has advised us through Shishtastakam prayers. There may be so many impediments for a person who is chanting Hare Krishna. Nonetheless, he is tolerating all these impediments and continues to chant the Maha Mantra so that he can have the full benefit of Krishna consciousness. Now, we have to try to understand this using a story, right? The most famous story that is quoted, as you all can see from the picture, is Ajamila story. Some of you may be aware of this story. This story is from Srimad Bhagavatam. We all know Ajamila is a Brahmana. He was a good Brahmana with a good behavior. He used to wake up early in the morning. He used to bow down to his mother and father. He used to perform his Sandhya Vandanam, and he was studying the Vedic literature and everything. But he didn't have much knowledge about soul, loving relationship, chanting of the glories of the holy name of the Lord, or going back to Godhead. He didn't have information on that. He was more of a Karmakandi Brahmana, so as to speak. He was doing all the rituals very well. But one day, when he happened to go to a forest, there he saw a very there he happened to see something. So he saw a low class man was actually embracing a woman and kissing her. And his mind, it became very polluted on seeing that. And later, what happened? He brought that lady home and he threw his mother and father out and even his chaste wife out. So he brought the prostitute home, but he threw all other people of his family out. And then, so because of this, he became very degraded. He begot 10 sons in the womb of this lady, and the last child he named was Narayana. Therefore, when Ajamila, when he became 88 years old, he happened to be on the deathbed, and he saw the two dangerous Yamatutas coming to him, and on seeing them, he loudly called out for Narayan, Narayan. And because he called the name of Narayan at the time of death, Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram. So what happened now? Narayana, upon hearing his name, became so pleased and he sent his Vishnututas as messengers from Vaikunta to make sure that Ajamila was rescued from the Yamatutas. And so the Yamatutas actually saw the Vishnututas, and upon seeing them, they actually did not kill Ajamil, but in fact spared them and went away. But Ajamila, he repented after the arrival of Vishnututas, and he began to contemplate about the purpose of his life and goal of his life. He repented very severely. He became a good devotee by going to Haridwar, and then he stayed in a Vishnu temple there. He heard Gita, Bhagavatam. He took a bath in Ganga river every day, and then worshipped Lord Vishnu and chanted his names throughout, and he was under good company. Because of this, his heart was purified. Then when death actually came, this time he was able to remember Lord's names. He continuously chanted, and because of this, he was able to remember the Lord's names at the time of death. And the same Vishnututas, they actually came in the Vaikunta plain and they took Ajamila back to Godhead. So this is the story of Ajamil. Ajamil's story is very inspiring and very, very attractive to just make use of this. I mean, this verse, Antakale Chamameva Smaran Muktva Kalevaram. As soon as we hear this verse, Ajamila pastime should come to our minds, because how did Ajamil, being a very Karmakandi Brahmana, how did he actually get into this platform of devotional service, and how he perfected his life through that process is something that we must remember and get inspired from. So this is what we can learn from this verse. So after this, now we are going to see a very important, most frequently quoted verse also. Let's delve into that. Before that, we'll see, okay, so there is we should realize that our human birth is very special, and our goal should be to return back to Krishna. So eating, mating, sleeping, and defending, as we can see, this is done by the lower creatures. And why should our humans be utilizing our life for these four activities? It doesn't make sense, right? So Srila Prabhupada, he also talks about art of living. Lord Krishna, he teaches the art of leaving the body to attain him at the time of death. What is the art of leaving the body? That is something that we must question, right? What is the art? How can we pass our final exam? The art of living is to learn and practice the art of leaving the material body and gain a spiritual body permanently. And human birth is specifically meant for this single goal. And focusing on sensuality, wealth, power, etc., missing this rare chance, we shall be doomed to the unending cycle of birth and death. So what happens is that if we continue through these four activities, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and not have Krishna consciousness in our life, then we are going to continue in the cycle of samsara on and on and on. There's never ending. It's never ending, right? And that is why we need to reason out, understand what is the goal of our life, and what is the art of leaving the material body, how to gain the spiritual body, what is the process, what is my sambandha, abhideya, and prayojan. That is something that we need to inquire upon and understand, so that we may perfect our life and be able to get that spiritual body everybody aspires for. Okay. What is the general law of destination after death? So this is something that we need to know. What is this? And the verse that is specifically quoted here very often by Srila Prabhupada is Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram tam tam eveti kaunteya sada tatbhava bhavitaha. One who remembers when leaving the body, O son of Kunti, he will surely attain a state similar to the object of constant thought. So let's try to understand this verse. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. So whatever bhava we remember at the time of death, tyajatante khalevaram, at the time we are giving up the body, tam tam eveti kaunteya, that one will attain. Sada tad bhava bhavitaha. So the word bhava has come in the previous verse also. If you look at 8.5, mad bhavam, right? Krishna says that you will attain my nature. Those of you who remember me at the time of death, you're going to attain my nature. So Krishna is saying that you will ultimately attain me. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. So for what is an example we can see for this verse? As you all can see in the picture, we can see that Bharat Maharaj, he remembered the deer during his death, during the time of death, and he got the body of the deer. Tam tam eveti kaunteya. That is what he will attain. Whatever he remembers at the time of death, that is what he will attain. So in this case of Bharat Maharaj from Srimad Bhagavatam, we are seeing that he remembered the deer at the time of death, and because of which he got a deer body. Sada tadbhava bhavitaha. That means Krishna is telling, looking at the state of the subtle body, one can actually understand what his future body is going to be. That means if you have a subtle body, and if your subtle body, what is subtle body? We all know it's mind, intelligence, and false ego. So whatever the subtle body has currently, if it is filled with lusty thoughts, you are going to get a lusty body. That is a body of a dog in your next birth. So we can certainly, even living in the present life, we can understand what our subtle body's intentions are. And based on that, we are going to actually get our next cross body. So this is the implication for this verse. And what kinds of thoughts we have, what are we continuously contemplating upon, those are all indicative of our future body. And so what we have to do, say for example, a person has lusty thoughts, and now we have to make sure that the person's consciousness is shifted to something higher so that he doesn't have those thoughts anymore. That is where Krishna consciousness comes into play. So very important for us to be engaged in Krishna conscious activities so that we can slowly start purifying the subtle mind body and subtle body, that is the mind, intelligence, and false ego. The purificatory process has to happen so that we will actually get a body based on what the subtle body intends for. So that purification has to happen. When lusty thoughts or some bad thoughts bother you, we have to somehow get out of it and engage ourselves into Krishna consciousness. That is the way we can get out. And so this is the implication for this verse. So different people, we all know, die in different ways. Some people we see, they speak normally and suddenly they would collapse, and somebody may get into an accident in a car, and we see lot of people these days are dying through COVID, right? I mean, it's so happening now. I mean, death is very common these days. Wherever, whenever, it doesn't matter. You're 32, 15, 52, 40, doesn't matter at all. But because we have COVID going on, we see that the age is not a determining factor. And now the next body, as I told you, whatever the subtle body intentions are, that determines your next cross body. A lusty person, what does he become? He becomes a dog. And a lazy person who's sleeping for long periods of time, he becomes a polar bear. And then a person who is eating meat, he becomes a carnivorous animal, a lion or a tiger. Somebody who is showing off his body without wearing clothes, he becomes a tree. So this is the case. This is what Srila Prabhupada says that in his purport. So if you look into the purport, you will clearly understand that the subtle body determines, the nature of the subtle body actually determines what gross body you are going to get in the future. So again, Bharat Maharaj, if you look at him, he was a great king. The Bharat Desha, it was named after King Bharat. He was a very pious king. He was a devotee king. He went to the forest after renunciation of all his worldly, possessions and his kingdom. Maharaj Bharat, although he was a great personality, he thought about the deer at the time of his death, and in his next life, he was transferred into the body of a deer. And we can see that even though he was in the body of a deer, he was able to remember his past activities. So he had to accept the animal body because he was compassionate to the deer. He started, first what happened was he started to give some grass to the deer. Then slowly he started to play with the deer. Then he started to keep the deer on his lap. And then he started to pat the deer in his shoulders. Then he would used to take the deer for a walk. And at the night he used to sleep with him, patting the deer on his chest. That's how he became attached to the deer. Right? I mean, so he became attached to the deer, because of which he was not able to focus on his devotional activities. To such an extent, he got attached to the deer. And we see these days people are attached to so many things, right? It could be video games, it could be addiction to TV, it could be addiction by playing some games all the time on the phone. There are so many things that people get addicted to these days. See, internet. Net means that something that grabs your attention. The net is not going to leave you. The internet, the word itself, that net is there, right? I mean, it is going to capture and engulf you. That is the purpose of internet. And we are all allured and attracted to the net, and we are captured and succumbed by so many temptations that is being shown on the net. You may not necessarily have a TV. You can say, I don't have a TV, but you're having internet, right? That itself is enough for us to be captured or controlled. So this is the scenario of today's world. There are so many things that we can get attached to, but what are we really getting attached to is what matters, right? I mean, even though there is computer, there is internet, we can definitely use it for Krishna consciousness. We can use it in a very useful way without getting distracted by things that pop up on your internet, right? I mean, this is the way we have to fine tune our subtle body, so that we can see there is a progression in our Krishna consciousness. Gradually it will happen by us not succumbing ourselves to the temptations that the world has to offer for us. So we also see that there are so many excuses that people give. They don't have time to worship the Lord. Oh, I don't have time. See, I work for long hours. I have to spend time with my dog. I have to take my dog to walk. I have to take care of it. I have to give shower to it. I have to take him to a beauty parlor, take care of his nails. So many priorities we have in our life. But even to worship the Lord for 5 or 10 minutes, people don't have time. So that is where we are heading to. So as the Kali Yuga progresses more and more and more, we are going to see less number of people in devotional activities. That is why there is a need to preach. That is why we need to share Krishna consciousness with others, so that they all understand the purpose of human form of life. So we understand that Prabhupada says two things in his purport. He says, lead your life in Sattva Guna and then become a Bhakta. This will help one to be transferred to Krishna Loka. So that I thought was very interesting. And we all know the famous Mukuntamala Shostra. Everyone, they all desire to give up the body while the body is physically sound and mentally sound. The desire was also expressed by Kulashekara, King Kulashekara, in his Mukuntamala Shostra. What is that he is expressing? Krishna Tvadiya Padapankaja Panjarantam Adyaiva me Vishatau Manasarhaja Hamsaha Prana Prayana Samaye Kapavata Pittaihi Kanto Varodhana Vidau Smaranam Kutaste. What does King Kulashekara say about this? He also desired to have his body be gone while he is physically sound, physically good and mentally good. King Kulashekara, he wanted to give up his body while he is in a healthy state. Thus he prayed to Lord Krishna to let him immediately die when he was in good health and while his mind was sound. So we, during the time of death, we are generally overpowered by mucus and bile, and thus we would choke. Since it's very difficult to vibrate or chant the holy names of the Lord, it is only by Krishna's grace we can chant. Otherwise, during the time of death, it's a painful process. Nobody will be able to remember Krishna unless Krishna, he gives us the mercy to remember him. And this desire of leaving the body when he is hale and healthy was expressed by Kulashekara, King Kulashekara, through Mukuntamala Shostra. I thought that was very interesting. And then there is also another from Varaha Purana, Lord Varaha, he addresses Mother Earth or Bhumi Devi. She was so worried about the conditions of the souls that are there in this world of Kali Yuga, going through the birth and death cycle. What is the status of these people, Krishna? Please, just Lord Varaha. So she asked this to Lord Varaha. And Lord Varaha, he actually clarified in third Sharma Sloka in Varaha Purana, which says, Lord Krishna says that if my devotee in their youthful age, when they are young and healthy, if they engage in devotional service, that is, go through this process of Navavidha Bhakti, by worshipping me, by bowing down to me, by paying obeisances unto me, by studying the scriptures and living a very scriptural life, what happens to such a kind of person who engages in devotional activities in a young age? This person, when he comes to the old age, what happens to him? He becomes very invalid, he becomes bedridden, and he suffers in coma and all that. And God says, if he is like that, if he is practically in a very unconscious state, what do I do to that person? I personally come and take them back to Godhead. This is the promise he gives. Lord Varaha, Mother Bhumi is always compassionate about the living entities because they are her children. And she affectionately asked Lord Varaha, please tell me if there is a way for these conditioned souls to go back home, to Goloka or Vaikuntha planets. And for that, Lord Varaha, he clarified and said that if he is going to practice devotional service from his young age, during the time when he's hale and healthy, if he is able to do the Navabhida Bhakti, I'm going to take him back to Godhead when he lies like unconscious, in an unconscious state during the time of death. This is a very, very powerful. I thought this is very powerful that Lord Baraha, he gives us a hope that he will take us to the destination if we sincerely practice devotional service. So I thought that it was interesting to quote that. And now, so we saw two important verses, how we can learn from the activity of Bharat Maharaj and how we can actually look at the pastime of Ajamil and learn from that. There are two inspirational stories from Srimad Bhagavatam that we were able to relate these Bhagavad Gita verses to. And now let's try to understand what Srila Prabhupada. So as I told you here, see this person, he's eating meat and therefore he's already preparing. See, it's depending on what the subtle body intends to do. We already know what our future destination is going to be. So he is going to become a tiger, as you can see from this picture. That is the way we perceive things. We are actually able to know where we are going to go based on what the subtle body's intentions are. So now Arjuna, he may be relieved, thinking, oh, Krishna is telling me to remember him. Oh, that's better advice than asking me to fight, right? So this is what was going on in Arjuna's mind. He's saying, okay, Arjuna, things okay. I have to remember Krishna all the time, and they don't have to fight, it looks like. So Krishna, he's clarifying here in this verse. तस्मात् सर्वेषु कालेषु मामनुस्मरयुध्य च मय्यर्पितमनोबुद्धिर्मामे वैश्यस्य संशयः. Therefore, at all times, you should think of me and do your prescribed duty of fighting. By offering your mind and intelligence onto me with your activities dedicated to me, you will attain me without any doubt. So this is what Krishna says, thinking of Krishna always, right? That is what is talked about in the purport also. This instruction to Arjuna is very important for all men engaged in material activities. The Lord does not say one should give up his prescribed duties or engagements. One should continue them at the same time think of Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna. This is going to free one from material contamination by engaging the mind and intelligence on Krishna. By chanting Krishna's name, one will be transferred to the supreme planet, Krishna Loka, without a doubt. So as we can understand, Arjuna had this notion that, okay, we have to remember Krishna, but he didn't ask me to fight. Does it mean that I just don't have to fight? So when that question has been immediately clarified here in this verse, he clearly says, obviously, not to give up his prescribed duties. If that is what Arjuna's intention is, no, you're wrong, Arjuna. That is not what you should do. You should engage in your prescribed duties. Think of me by chanting Hare Krishna and glorifying the holy names of the Lord while you're doing your work or prescribed duty. In this way, what is going to happen is that you're going to get transferred to my loka. So it is very interesting to note this point that obviously it is a Herculean task for all of us to remember Krishna during work. But Krishna, he advises here that, you are having your prescribed duty, do your prescribed duty, but at the same time, remember me. So that is the instruction Krishna gives here. Therefore, Krishna wants us to do our prescribed duties at the same time, think of him always. And we should remember Krishna and work for him in devotion, and for his pleasure is what we should work for. And that is the mentality or consciousness we should have. So that way we are able to tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara. So now Arjuna may think, how is this possible? How is this possible, Krishna? How can I think of you always, that too at work? So for that he answers in the next verse. How is that possible? That question is answered in the next verse. Let's move on to our next verse, 8.8. अभ्यासयोगयुक्तेन चेतसा नान्यकामिना परमं पुरुषं दिव्यं याति पार्थानुचिन्तयन्. He who practices to meditate with undeviated mind and consciousness upon me, the Supreme Transcendental Person, attains me by constant thinking of me. So, what is the implication on this verse? So, remembering Krishna, right? The mind, remembering Krishna is a powerful practice. That it can empower us to conquer the conditioned nature. If you look at us, we are all conditioned by the modes of material nature. We all have different strengths, weaknesses, attachments according to the association with the modes that we are we have. Somebody may be in goodness, somebody may act in goodness or passion or ignorance, depending on what kind of activity is. A person may not act in rajas always or tamas always or sattva always. For different activities he could react in different ways. That is what our conditioning is, right? We have got this conditioning from several births, and because of that we act in a certain way. So what we should do is we should conquer that. Somehow we have to conquer and get out of this conditioning. That can be possible by Krishna's mercy. By what is that process? By always remembering him. That is how we can get out of this conditioning nature, the conditions that we have accumulated from different births, based on which we act in a certain way. That can be overcome or that can be removed by actually remembering Krishna, again through the mercy of Lord Krishna. So we learned from 6.35, I guess. Yeah, remembering him takes constant practice and determination, right? It is not easy. You have to constantly practice and do it with determination so that you are able to remember Krishna at all points in time. And then here Srila Prabhupada clarifies in his purport. Let's see what he has to say. The mind is fickle, therefore it is necessary for the mind to be engaged by force to think of Krishna. One example often given is that of a caterpillar that thinks of becoming a butterfly and so is transformed into the butterfly in the same life. Can you imagine this example? This particular boy in the picture, he is constantly remembering Krishna. So what will happen? He will acquire the same nature of Krishna and he will get transferred to Krishna Loka in some time. That is what we can understand from this butterfly example. Similarly, if we constantly think of Krishna, it is certain that at the end of our life, we shall have the same bodily constitution as Krishna. So whatever we think of and remember constantly is what we become. So Krishna here very much clarifies abhyasa is required. He needs to practice. It is not going to come easy to us. Nothing in this world is easy, right? The constant practice, and if you need to achieve something, even if you have to acquire $5, it takes a little bit of an effort to acquire that $5. What about Krishna? He is the supreme Lord, cause of all causes, absolute truth. If we want to go to him, then there is definitely a lot of endeavor that needs to happen. At the same time, when Krishna sees your endeavor, he is going to give that mercy to you. So it's a double way process. It's two reciprocal, right? He is reciprocal. It's not that we keep doing and nothing we get in return. Obviously, it's a reciprocal. So more the endeavor we put in, Krishna, he reciprocates according to that endeavor. So that is the clarification that we see through this verse 8.8. So then let's now move to the next verse. I'm sorry. Okay, now we are coming to the okay, how can we remember Krishna? So we saw we are told to remember Krishna, and now one may have this question: how to remember Krishna? What are the ways to remember Krishna? So this here, it's all in the context of this is Yoga Mishra Bhakti, meaning this person is involved in devotional service tinged with yoga. So this person, how does he remember Krishna? So this is a beautiful verse that we have. Kavim Puranam Manusasitaram Manoraniyamshamanusmaretyaha Sarvasya Dataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasa Parastat. What is Kavim? Kavim Puranam means he is omniscient. Puranam means he is the beginningless or the oldest. Does it mean he looks old? I mean, he has white hair, he has a long beard, he has a mustache. How does he look? No, he doesn't look like all of what you're saying. He looks young and youthful. And Anusasitaram, he is the supreme controller of the sun and the moon and the planets and the universe and millions of universes. Anushashitaram, he is the controller of everything. Anoraniyamsham. So Anoraniyamsham is the smaller than the smallest. Anusmaretyaha, we should always think of him. And Sarvasya Dataram, what is Anoraniyam? That means he is within the atom and he pervades the entire universe. And Anusmaretyaha, he is in my heart. There is no place on this earth, no place anywhere in this world that he is not present. He has created millions of universes from the pores of his body, Mahavishnu's body, all the universes emanate. So in that way, he is present in the heart of the jivas also as Shirodakshai Vishnu. So he is there. Not any place is left out in this world where he is not present. Sarvasya Dataram. So string of pearls like a nylon thread holding, we see that everything is holding, the pearls are all holding together in place because of this thread. How is the sun setting? How is the moon rising? How are things, how are the stars twinkling? How are the flowers blooming? How are the rivers filled with water? When we ask these questions, it is all because of Sarvasya Dataram. He is the reason for this. He is the maintainer of all this. Achintya Rupam. He is Achintya Rupam. He has an inconceivable form. He is not impersonal. He has a beautiful form. And Aditya Varnam. So one should think of him. His body is glowing like how the sun is glowing. He is luminous like a sun and self-revealing. Tamasa Parastat. He is transcendental to material nature. He is not at all bound or affected by the material nature. Maya is under his control. So that is how we can remember Krishna. When we look at what are the ways in which this Bhakta thinks, the yogi thinks, he is thinking in this way. Kavim Puranam Anusasitaram Manoraniyamsham Anusmaretya Sarvasya Dataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasa Parastat. So, one should meditate upon the Supreme Person as one who knows everything, as he is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, and who is always a person, not an impersonalist. He is luminous like a sun, he is transcendental, and he is beyond this material nature. So now let's move on to our next verse to see what does this yogi do? What are the requirements for this yogi? What is the result this yogi achieves? And what process does this Ashtanga yogi or Ashtanga yogi follows? Let's try to understand this. So one, I think we have already seen this in the 6th chapter, so I'm not going in much depth, but we can definitely understand what this Ashtanga yogi does. One who at the time of death fixes his life air prana between the two eyebrows by the strength of the yoga with an undeviating mind, remembering the Supreme Lord in full devotion, he will certainly attain me. That is what Krishna says. And what are the requirements for him to attain? He has to completely be a renunciant. He has to have no material desires. He must be a celibate. He must have knowledge of the Vedas, and he must utter Om. These are all the requirements, okay? And now there is a process after this. Okay, once the requirements are met, you have to go through a process and then you get into a result, right? So now we saw the requirements. The requirements itself are very heavy, right? You should not have any material desires, not even a tinge of material desire. You must be celibate. You must abstain from sex life completely. You must have knowledge of the Vedas. Very, very tough to understand Vedas. And then you have to utter the syllable Om. So these are the requirements for you. And now to getting on to the process. What is the process? You have to close your eyes, close all the doors of senses, withdrawing the senses from the sense objects. You have to fix the mind in the heart and then fix the prana, that is the life air on the top of the head, and taking shelter of me completely. You have to take shelter of me completely. So this is the process. So complete withdrawal of the senses from the sense objects. You have to fix the mind in the heart, because that is where Paramatma is. And then you have to fix the life air on top of the head, and then take shelter of Krishna completely. Then what happens? You will get liberated and entrance into Brahman. This is what 13 verses, up to 13 verses, the Satashakra Yoga is being clarified from 11 to 13. So now let's move on to the 14th verse. Ananya chetah satatam yomam smarati nityasaha tasyaham sulabha partha nityayuktasya yoginah. So if you look at a yogi, we saw that the yogic process was very tough. It is not easy. But here Krishna, he compares it to the Kevala Bhakti. What is Kevala Bhakti? Shuddha Bhakti. That process we have, the pure Bhakti process we have, is very easy. Sulabha. Sulabha means easy. Compared to what? Compared to the yogic process we have. So what is quoted here? It says, without deviation to mind or other process or goals, the devotee always remembers me exclusively. For him, I'm very easy to obtain because of his constant engagement in devotion. So this is what is indicative here. So now Sulabha means very easy. They attain Krishna very easily because, once they come to a point where they become a pure devotee of the Lord, what happens is, instead of you being controlled by Krishna, Krishna actually comes under the control of you. That is what we see in Damodar Leela. Yashoda Amma, she actually controls Krishna. She controls Krishna by her love. Likewise, Arjuna is controlling Krishna as a charioteer by his love. So if you want to come to the stage, first we must become puppet in the hands of Krishna. Like we see in the example of Srila Prabhupada, he went to America in Jalatuta, as we all know. He got a couple of heart attacks on the way. So can we all imagine a 70-year-old person? He is in the ship all alone by himself and getting heart attacks on his way. If it were to happen to us, we will take a U-turn and say completely bye-bye to America, and we will get back, moving to India, back again to our hometown, wherever we belong. But he went to America and stayed there next 10 years, 12 years, like that. From 1965 to 77, he preached. What he did was, in the Jalatuta ship itself, he said, I want to become a puppet in the hands of you, Lord Krishna. That was the state of mind. And he actually became the puppet in the hands of Krishna. So first, the devotees actually become puppet in Krishna's hands. And then when Krishna is pleased, the reversal happens. Reversal meaning Krishna then comes under the control of the devotee. So in this way, Kevala Bhakti or Shuddha Bhakti is able to be attained. That is how we practice this. So our intention must be that we must become a puppet in the hands of Krishna. So with Srila Prabhupada's example, we are able to perceive and understand this verse. So now we are going to go to the next verse. Now Krishna, he starts the next theme where he says how to get the impetus to fix the mind on you. By describing the results of Kevala Bhakti, one will be able to fix the mind on you. And what is the result of not fixing the mind on you? That will also be discussed in 18 and 19 verses. So now we will understand what is the result of Kevala Bhakti. That is Shuddha Bhakti. मामुपेत्य तु पुनर्जन्म दुःखालयम् अशाश्वतं नाप्नुवन्ति महात्मानः संसिद्धिं परमां गतः. After attaining me, they never take birth again. In this temporary world, which is full of miseries, such great souls, they never return to this world. Having attained the highest goal of personal service to me, they never come back to this world. So, which is what is clarified here. So let's try to understand and perceive what Krishna is trying to say here. So since this temporary world is full of miseries, old age, death and disease naturally comes to that kind of person, because he's in the material world, he has to go through this birth cycle, death and old age, right? And when he attains the highest perfection, what happens to that person? That person, he actually attains Goloka Vrindavana, and he is not going to return back to the other worlds. The planet which is beyond the material vision is Goloka Vrindavana, and it is the highest goal and the destination of all Mahatmas. So that is where this person is going to go. So that is this world this world we all know is a place of misery, and so Gita, it actually helps us to understand how to get out of this misery and go to a world that is permanent, where we are able to serve Lord Krishna, which is what is our innate nature. Our innate nature is to serve, and we are actually in this engaged in the material body, and we need to get into our spiritual body so we are able to bring out our eternal nature of serving the Lord. And that is what, that is why Srila Prabhupada always stresses this place is Dukkalayam Ashashvatam. So we need to get out of it and make our destination a better place. So make use of this body and engage yourself in devotional service. That way there is no rebirth. No birth, death, old age and disease. The samsara is not going to continue. All right, so let's move on to our next verse. So rebirth is there in all planets except Krishna's abode. So let's understand what that means. So, okay, only Krishna's abode is a place where there is no rebirth. All other planets have rebirth. So even Brahmaloka, is it right? Or Brahmaloka doesn't have, if you go to Brahmaloka, don't we have to, is it eternal? Somebody may have that question, right? But Krishna, he clarifies something here. Abrahma bhuvana loka punaravartinorjuna mamupetya tu kampeya punarjanma na vidyate. Everyone in all planets up to Brahmaloka, they actually take birth and death, repeated birth and death. But one who attains my abode, O son of Kunti, he never takes birth again. So this is the clarification that Srila Prabhupada brings. A Brahma Bhuvana Loka, from topmost planetary system to the lowest. The Brahma Bhuvana Loka, so the right up to the planet of Brahma, that is Brahmaji, one may go to Brahma Loka. What will happen to that person? Punaravartino Arjuna, one will come back again even if he goes there. Maam upetya tu kaunteya. If he worships Krishna, then what happens to that person? Punarjanma na vidyate. So Krishna is giving two paths with two destinations. One is the material destination, that is material world. The highest destination is Brahmaloka, but even that is temporary. Therefore, that will not give you something that is eternal. Only by worshipping Krishna, you are going to get eternal result. So, which is what is clarified by Srila Prabhupada. All kinds of yogis, karma, jnana, hatha, etc., eventually they have to attain devotional perfection in Bhakti Yoga. Because only when they get into this Bhakti Yoga process, they are going to be able to perfect that and be able to go to Krishna's abode. Till then, they cannot go. Before, so that is the abode. When they actually go there, there is going to be no return. It is just a one-way ticket. You go there and you are permanently there. That's all. Those who attain these highest material planets, that is the planets of the demigods or the heavenly planets, Brahmaloka, everything, they are all subjected to repeated birth and death. So it is all temporary. One is temporary, another is eternal. And now let's move on to the next verse. Sahasrayuga paryantam aharyat brahmano viduhu ratrim yuga sahasrantam teho ratra vido janaha. So what does this verse say? This verse actually talks about the duration of Brahma's life. So if you look at it, Brahma's life, so one day of Brahma is 4.232 billion human years. One night of Brahma is 4.32 billion human years. So if you look at 1 year of Brahma, it is 3.110 trillion years, 1 year. So a lifespan of Brahma, if you look at it, it is 100 years. So 100 Brahma years is equal to 311 trillion and 40 billion Earth years. That is what the calculation says. And so we have this calculation elaborated, and where we talk about what is the day of Brahma, the night of Brahma. One day of Brahma, it has 14 manvantras and 15 Santyakals, based on which, it comes up to 100 Magayugas. And then they calculate, okay, one day of Brahma is 4.32 billion years. Another one night of Brahma is 4.32 billion years. Now, when we come to 1 year of Brahma, it is going to be 3.1104 trillion human years. After which we calculate life of Brahma, which happens to be 100 Brahma years. That is 100 Brahma years is nothing but 311 trillion 40 billion Earth years. So if you look at this lifespan, we are all living for 100 human years. And looking at Brahma's lifetime, it seems like, man, it's forever and ever. But Srila Prabhupada says, by these calculations, the life of Brahma seems fantastic and interminable. But from a viewpoint of eternity, it is just as brief as a lightning flash. So brief. If you look at it from Brahma's perspective, it's just like a lightning flash, it's gone. In the causal ocean, there are innumerable Brahmas that are rising and disappearing like bubbles in Atlantic. And Brahma and his creation are all part of material universe, and therefore they are in constant flux. In the material universe, not even Brahma, he is free from the process of birth, old age, death, and disease. So this is what Srila Prabhupada clarifies. So very important for us to understand that even Brahma has to go through this cycle of birth and death and disease and old age. So Krishna, he is trying to bring, Krishna is preparing a contrast to describe the benefit of leaving the material world for the spiritual world. So here Krishna says that even the most beautiful planet, the wonderful planet, Brahmaloka, that is also influenced by time, right? How does time affect us? Time forces us the annihilation of every material body. So because of annihilation, what happens is that we all the attachments that we have developed over the lifetime, they are all ripped apart. And so this happens over and over again. We come into the birth and then develop attachment, then death comes. After that, the subtle body goes along with the soul. Then he develops further attachments in the next set of body, and this process continues. So he's trying to bring a contrast to help us understand that, see, in this material world, if you were to aim and go for a destination, nothing is eternal. So you better aim to go to the spiritual world, which is the eternal abode. Okay. And so here Krishna is talking about the eternality of the spiritual world, that is the abode of Krishna. Avyaktokshara ityuktas tamahu paramam gatim yam prapyana nivartante tattama paramam mama. That which is described as indestructible, eternal, and the supreme destination, that place from which, having attained it, one never returns, that is my supreme abode, says Lord Krishna. The supreme abode of the personality of Godhead, Krishna, is described in Brahma Samhita as Chintamani Dham, a place where all the desires are fulfilled. The supreme abode of Lord Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavana, is full of palaces made of touchstone. Whatever you desire there in Goloka Vrindavana, you are going to get that. So there are trees called desire trees, which are able to supply any kind of eatables upon demand. There are cows called Surabhi cows, which supply unlimited milk. In this abode, the Lord is served by hundreds and thousands of goddess of fortune, and he is called Govinda, the primal Lord and cause of all causes. Very beautiful, right? Just looking at the description from Brahma Samhita, it seems really, really attractive. How this place, Goloka Vrindavana, which is full of desire trees, and whatever desires you have, it's going to get fulfilled when you go to that place. That is what is being clarified there. So the spiritual world, it exists. It is just not another location. It is another level of reality, and it is something that continues to exist even after there is material destruction. Material world is destructed, no problem. Material world is destructed, but that spiritual abode where Krishna stays, that abode is not a place for destruction. And so in 21, he identifies the supreme destination to be Krishna's eternal abode by using these terms, Paramam Gatim, that is the supreme destination, and Mama Parandamam. Paramdama, it means it is the supreme abode. And one who attains that abode, he is never going to return to this mortal world. That is, mortal world meaning this material world is prone to destructions and it is not eternal. And so that is what is the contrast that Srila Prabhupada brings by Krishna saying this, that his abode is eternal And we know the other things that even the Brahmaloka, it is not eternal, it is temporary. So this is where he wants us to shift our focus to reaching the supreme abode and not be allured by any of the abodes that are there in the material world. So now we have seen the abode. We know what is Goloka Vrindavana, and we also know about Brahmaloka. All the abodes are being described by Krishna. Now Krishna, he has to attain the process through which we can actually attain the abode. So that is what is clarified in the next few verses. पुरुषस्य परं पार्थ भक्त्या लभ्यस्त्वनन्यया यश्यन्तस्तानि भूतानि येन सर्वं इदं ततम्. O Partha, the Supreme Person who is greater than all, is attainable by unalloyed, undeviating devotion. Everything is situated within him. He is all pervading, although he is present in his abode. To enter into Krishna's supreme abode or the innumerable Vaikuntha planets, how is it possible? It is possible only by bhakti or devotional service, as it's indicated by the word bhaktya. No other process can help one attain that abode. Only through bhakti you can attain. That is why it is said Krishna's abode is attainable only by ananya bhakti. Right? It should not be tinged with any other karma jnana or anything like that. Unalloyed, undeviating devotion through bhakti is the way to actually attain Krishna's abode. So he makes it clear here. Purushasya parampartha. Purusha is para. He is supreme. No one is greater than him. How is that Purusha attained? Bhaktya labhyastvananyaya. He is attained by ananya bhakti. And what is the characteristic of that Purusha? Yashyantastani bhutani. So Yashyanta, meaning all material existence is situated within him. And yena sarvam idam tatam. And he is inside everything. So this is a beautiful statement. How is it possible? Everything is inside him and he is also within everything. How is this possible? It is possible. We can understand this through his inconceivable nature. He can manifest himself in multiple ways, right? We all understand how is that everything is residing within him. Meaning in Mahavishnu, by Mahavishnu, we are all during the time of annihilation, we all go into the body of Mahavishnu. And at the time we are there, Paramatma is there within every living entity. That is how, through his inconceivable nature, we are able to understand that everything is within him and he is within everything. So that is the contrast that Srila Prabhupada talks about in this purport. Moving on to the 24th and 26th verse. Let's try to understand this verse. So now he comes back to this yogi and karma yogi and jnana yogi again. So let's try to understand what is the destination and how do they actually leave the body. And here it's quoted that the path of light at an auspicious moment during the day in Shukla Paksha, that is the fortnight of the waning moon, in Uttarayana, that is 6 months when the sun travels to the north, that is when this jnani or a yogi leaves his body. And when he leaves the body at that time of the day, during the path of light, what happens to that person? That person, he attains Brahma Jyoti. Okay, this is where the jnani's destination is. Now there is, okay, if somebody is not able to give up the body during that time of the day, what about what happens to them? Can you please elaborate? And for that person, there is another path. There is another path that path is path of darkness. In darkness, in Krishna Paksha, that is fortnight of the waning moon, in Dakshinayana, where the sun actually travels to the south. So what happens then? This person who is a karmi, he actually goes to the heaven. And this is a path of return, meaning it is not eternal, he has to come back. We all know heaven is a path of return, which means once your credits for punya are done, you have to come back to the earthly planet, right? That is when your credits are done, when your punya credits are done, you have to come back again. This is what happens when this person leaves at this particular time, meaning in Krishna Paksha, in Dakshinayana, when the sun actually travels south, if he leaves gives his body up during that time, then that is a path of return. So we have Brahmajyoti, that is Jnani going there, and then a Karma Yogi, he is going to the heavens, which is a path of return. Okay, now, so now Arjuna may ask this question. Oh my God, looks like so many conditions are here, right? I mean, this particular time, if there are so many conditions, we see that rules are given here. Karmis, they want to go to heaven, so they may want to leave the body at a particular time. Jnani, he has a rule, he has to go give up his body at this particular time. Oh, it looks like a very tough job. What about me? How am I going to take care of this process? Krishna, please help me understand this. Like that, we see that Arjuna, how will I take care of all this? Krishna says, you don't have to worry about all this. So that is where Krishna, he comes into picture and gives Arjuna a beautiful response. Let's see what he has to say about this. So Krishna, so when we understand the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna, it's like, see, we have to understand it from a real life example, right? If we were to take care of a child, we would take care of the child, and the child doesn't have to worry about it at all. Say, for example, if you were to travel to a place, if you were to go to Los Angeles, then the parents, they start preparing. Okay, I can buy the tickets from this airline, let's see the cost, they'll work through the cost, then they will prepare a baggage, work through the baggage. But the child, he's just 2 years old and he's not at all involved in any of this. The child is actually taken care of by the parent. In a similar manner, the bhaktas, they are the lovers of the Lord and they are taken care of by Krishna. So like, if winter season comes, we don't, the child doesn't need to prepare, okay, where is my sweater, where is my jacket? The mom or the parent, they do it everything. I mean, if he's just a 2-year-old, so everything is done for him. Likewise, the devotees are like that. The child doesn't have to bother. Likewise, the devotees don't have to bother, which is what Krishna says. At the time of death, the mind carries one to a new life. People in general must leave a body at a suitable time. That is, say, for example, in the path of light or path of darkness. But for a Krishna conscious devotee or a pure devotee in Krishna consciousness, there is no fear of returning to this world. Whether they leave at an auspicious time or an inauspicious time, by accident or arrangement, all this, it doesn't matter at all. By being fully surrendered soul, they leave everything in Krishna's hands and easily go back to the spiritual world. So we just need to understand that, have faith on Krishna, that he will take care of us, and there is no need for us to worry about, okay, what time of the day I should leave in. Is it Uttarayanam? Don't have to worry about it. For a devotee, there is no need to worry, which is what is clarified in the purport number 27, where Krishna, he actually gives assurance to the devotees, not asking them to worry, because he takes care of the devotees by taking them to the spiritual abode. Okay, so the devotee, as I told you, Naiti Shriti Partha Janan Yogi Muhyati Kashana Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu Yoga Yukto Bhavarjuna. Although the devotees know these two paths, oh Arjuna, they are never bewildered. They are always fixed in devotion. The devotee should be firmly established in Krishna consciousness and he should chant Hare Krishna. He should know that the concern over either of these two paths is troublesome. The best way is to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness. That is the way he'll always be able to dovetail in his service, and this way he will go to the spiritual kingdom, which is safe, certain, and direct. So that is the path of the devotees. Now we are going to come to the final verse, and let's understand what this final verse has to mean. The supreme position of a bhakti yogi is what is clarified in the last verse. Vedeshu yajneshu tapaschu chaiva dhaneshu yat punya phalam pratishtam adyeti tat sarvam idam viditva yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam. By studying the Vedas, performing the sacrifices, undergoing the austerities, and giving charity, whatever points may be obtained, one can surpass all of them by knowing me and my glories and performing devotional service. Such a devotee, he attains the eternal abode. So beautiful verse, which is the conclusion verse for 8th chapter in Bhagavad Gita. This verse actually summarizes what chapter 7 and 8 says by describing the supreme position of a bhakti yogic path. The verse clarifies the point by explaining how devotee is the best, and by his devotion, a devotee automatically he gains the results of all other paths without even desiring them. Most importantly, the devotee, after he gets all the results, he goes to the supreme abode, that is the supreme spiritual world. So just like, for example, if you have $1 million, we know that we have $5, we have $10, we have $100, we have $500, including in that, right? That is what devotional serve, the bhakti yoga, it encompasses everything. It gives you all the results that the other processes has to offer without even you desiring for it. That is the glory of bhakti yogi. And he gets paramsthanam. Paramsthanam means he gets the love of Krishna. Everything else is included in the love of Krishna. When you look at it from larger perspective, everything is included in it. So what he should do, Prabhupada describes that we should study the Bhagavad Gita and have love for Krishna, and immediately what will happen is that you will get into that paramsthanam, where one completely falls in love with Krishna. The highest perceptional stage of life enables the devotee to be transferred to Krishna Loka, the spiritual sky, or the Goloka Vrindavana, where one can be eternally happy. That is the ultimate goal. And this is what a devotee should hanker for. And that is the supreme position of a bhakti yogi. So this is the conclusive verse, as I told you. So now we saw that Arjuna, he had 8 questions, and how Krishna, he answered those 8 questions was seen from verse 1 to 4, and 5 to 8 talks about remembering Krishna at the time of death. If you were to remember Krishna at the time of death, you can't just remember him at the time of death, but practically through one's life, you have to constantly be remembering him. That is the way you will be able to remember Krishna at the time of death. So it is a process. It is just not a one-time attempt, right? And then we saw about 19 to 13 describing the process of Sata Chakra Yoga, how this yogi remembers the Lord, and how what is the requirements, what is the process, and what is the destination of this yogi. If you look at the requirements itself seeming very, very tough. And there Krishna, he brings the contrast to say how this the devotional process is sulabha. It is very easy compared to the yogic process. That's when we see the contrast from 14 to some verses till 16. And then 17 to 22 talks about even Brahmaloka. It is very temporary. It's not eternal like you think. One day of Brahma may seem like billions of years, but then it is just, in reality, it is like a flashing lightning flash. And then when you look at the spiritual world, even when other worlds are destroyed, the spiritual world, it remains permanent. And then from 23 to 28, we saw about what is the supremacy of Bhakti Yogi in attaining Krishna. We saw there is 2 paths that the yogi and the Karma Yogi and the Jnani wants. And then we see a devotee doesn't have to hanker for those paths, but Krishna, he will ultimately take care of the devotee of the Lord. And the 28th verse finally clarifies about the point to say that the supreme position of a Bhakti Yogi, where he doesn't have to aspire for anything else, even though he gets all of them. It just comes to him automatically following the Bhakti Yogi process. And that is why Bhakti Yoga is supreme over other processes. And then through this Bhakti Yoga, one can reach the supreme abode. Without bhakti, nobody can reach that abode, and that is the speciality of that abode. And when you are able to go to that abode, you are going to be eternally involved in serving the Lord. And that is what is your innate nature, and that is what we should hanker for, because our nature is to serve. And who we have to serve? It is Lord Krishna, and that is through the Navavidha Bhakti, Navavidha, 9 processes of devotional service. So this is the summary of the 8th chapter. So with this, we will conclude today's session. Jai Srila Prabhupada. I thank all the devotees who are patiently hearing me. I really hope that you all got the message of Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, dear devotees. And I want to also extend my thanks to all the devotees who helped making the PowerPoint. We are all a joint team, and thanks to Lalitangi Mataji, Sukhasari Mataji, Preeti Mataji, and Vinita Mataji. Of course, you know, when I told her that come to the call 15 minutes early, she was there even before me. So I sincerely appreciate the gratitude the devotees show upon each other. So it's very, very nice and very inspiring to see devotees helping each other. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, such a beautiful, wonderful summary. You took us really, it's like, it's like going into an exhibits of 8th chapter. It was so nice and picturesque, and the flow was wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and effort and wonderful presentation. Hare Krishna. So if any devotees have any questions or comments or realizations, please go ahead now.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Such a beautiful class. It was like, so breezy and so pleasant to hear everything, flowed so smoothly. And it was so nice to listen to. Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Sukasagari Mataji, for always inspiring me. Hare Krishna. Really, really grateful to you and your association. Seems
Thank
like
you so much, Mataji.
thank
Radhika Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you, Pranakopika Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much for such a beautiful, beautiful class, Mataji. Very nice explanation. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Very
Krishna.
grateful to you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. And
Thank
your
you.
summary at the end helps us, Mataji.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for your inspiration.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Lakshmi Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. It was such a wonderful class. Mataji, when you were discussing about the example of Ajamal, so throughout this chapter, we can see Krishna's insisting on remembering Krishna at the time of death. That's the main point that Krishna was telling again and again. So, but in the case of Ajamal, I think, forgive me if I'm wrong, because Ajamal was not remembering God, right? He was just only uttering the holy name. He was calling his son's name. So is that example for the power of the holy name? Like, how do I connect it with the chapter 8?
Yes, Mataji, he's so merciful that even if you're doing it, even though it is not, it is not, he was not thinking about the Lord, but the fact that he was able to remember is because he has done something in the past which helped him to remember God at the time of, at the critical moment. And because he uttered, Lord is so merciful. You sometimes, we unknowingly name our kids the way, say, for example, Narshimha or Srinivas or, we Chaitanya, Nimai, right? I mean, we name the kids so that through the name, we sometimes can get the benefit like how Ajamil got. And Lord is so merciful. That is the exhibition of that particular story. Even though he doesn't intentionally chant Lord's name, but Lord actually, you see, like Ranganath, he actually closes his eyes. He doesn't want to see anything bad the devotee has. He just, like Jagannath, he magnifies his eyes so he can see the good qualities of devotees. Likewise, he's very eager to take us back home. And he gives Ajamil a chance, right? He doesn't take him directly back home. He asks Ajamil, you practice, you perfect, then you come to me.
Yes, Mataji. So you see, when Bharat Maharaj, he was actually attached to the deer, we see. So here in case Ajamal, he was also attached to his son. That's why he's calling his son. Right?
The thing is, the fact he is calling that name, see, how can a small boy help him, right? I mean, the fact he is calling the name itself signifies that there is a greater meaning to it. That is what the purports of various acharyas clarifies. It is not by chance it is happening. The fact somebody remembers at a Krishna at a critical moment, it doesn't happen like that. it takes one to practice to perfect, and that time if he remembers, that means he has gone through the process of purification in his childhood, because of which he was able to chant the name at that critical moment.
Okay, okay, Mataji. So he has gone through the process in his childhood. In his childhood, he was a devotee. So
Correct.
somewhere he was a devotee in his life.
Exactly. Otherwise, it doesn't come to us like that. One cannot, even if you want to, it cannot happen.
Yes.
It is not by
Yeah.
chance.
Okay, okay, Mataji. And one more clarification. In text 8.8, the translation was telling that constantly think of Krishna. It is certain that at the end of our lives, we shall have the same bodily constitution as Krishna. So what is the same bodily constitution, Mataji?
So this qualities, right? The qualities of Krishna, we are not going to have all of them as we know in full, but whatever qualities Krishna has, we will attain that qualities. That is what is exhibited through the example of the butterfly. He constantly thinks about the butterfly and he becomes the butterfly. In this case, it is not saying we are going to become gods, but we are going to acquire his qualities to whatever possible extent we can, but again, not in full.
Okay, so acquire his qualities, because to go to Krishna Loka, we have to have the transcendental nature like Krishna, like the spiritual, totally transcendental.
Correct.
So that is what it's meant there.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, Mataji, that clarifies that. And Mataji, you were also telling about the every dham, like even Brahmalok used to get destroyed. And then the purport you also said that even Brahma undergoes the old age, disease, and etc. But I don't know, Mataji, I have never heard like that, like Brahma undergoing all these changes. So is there like somewhere scripturally it has been given that Brahma
No,
undergoes these changes?
it is clarified in the purport in the Srila Prabhupada's purport. I mean, the fact he's trying to bring out is that this material world is not a place where you can think of it to be eternal. Even that is where he brings up the point to say even Brahma Loka is not eternal, and Brahma also goes through this change, because at the end of his 100 years he dies, right? And that is when there is this full, I mean, that is the annihilation that takes place after Brahma dies, right?
Yeah.
So that is the point that he tries to bring. It is not that Brahma is there but he doesn't die. No, even Brahma has to die, even though he's the creator. We may think, oh, he's the creator of everybody, how can the creator die, right? But he also dies. And that is when we are in the unmanifest mode, where we are there for the unmanifest mode for long yuga cycles, thousands and thousands of yuga cycles. Nothing happens to us, and we are just there. And then the process creation happens, then the another Brahma comes, and then we are in the manifest mode, then unmanifest, manifest. It just goes in cycle.
Okay, Mataji, in connection to that, so is there what has happened to Vaikunta, like the place where Lord Narayan is there?
That is also eternal abode. Vaikunta,
Okay.
Goloka, Vrindavana, there are innumerable Vaikunta planets, right? I mean, Matsya, Varaha, Narsimha, Rama, all those are Vaikunta planets, and there is no destruction even there.
Okay, Mataji. Yes, Mataji. So it was a wonderful class and you cleared out my doubts, Mataji. It was so nice. The slides are very fantastic, Mataji. The titles you put on the slides, they were very nice. It gives the gist of what is going to be covered in the particular topic. So it is very useful, very nice. And thank you and all the devotees who helped for this slide and for the preparation. We are very grateful to you, Mataji. Jai Sachinandana, Hare Krishna.
Jai Sachinandana, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Very nice class, Mataji. As Mataji mentioned, your slides are very nice and they clarify what is being talked next, and it's very easy to digest. So my question here is, Mataji, you mentioned about the constant remembrance of Krishna. So in our like material lives, we are so much engaged. How can we constantly remember Krishna? Like how can we inculcate that habit?
So the pure devotees of the Lord, what they do is they look at Krishna everywhere. Krishna and Krishna's energy is what they see in everybody. So that is how they are able to remember Krishna at all points in time. If the thing is, what Krishna is trying to bring over there by asking us to constantly remember him is, see, if we don't remember him in the midst of so many problems that are happening, then how is it possible for us to remember him at the time of death? At the time of death, our body is put into so much pains and so much suffering. If you're alive and if you're not able to think about Lord, how at the time of death it is possible for you to think about Lord? So that is where we have to bring in how the pure devotee actually remembers Krishna. So to the extent we practice devotional service, to that extent we will be able to remember Krishna at all points in time. So this the vision of a pure devotee is that he sees, whenever he sees somebody, he doesn't see the material qualification of the person. He sees, as we say, vidya vinaya shampanne, right? He sees the soul and the super soul in a devotee's and in a person's heart. He doesn't look at him externally. He doesn't have a material vision at all. So whatever he comes in contact with, he says, oh, he looks at a mountain, he thinks, what a beautiful creation of a Lord. He looks at something else, he just understands, oh, this is Krishna's opulence. Like that, each and everything, that is the vision of a pure devotee. That is what we should hanker for. And that is the way we can constantly remember Krishna. This is what is said in Srimad Bhagavatam. How the devotees actually perceive Lord is that they see Lord in everything, in everywhere.
Yes, Mataji, but the anarthas which we have, they
Correct.
don't allow us to, right, get
Correct.
angry. How much ever, when we are calm, we think we should not be angry. Even like house example, the kids don't listen, then we think that, oh, we don't have to shout, we don't have to be angry. But the situation comes that way that the anger arises, and later maybe we will be thinking, oh, we should not have done this way, or we should have handled the situation better. All the, like, it's very difficult.
Correct, Mataji. That is so true. As we progress in Krishna consciousness, this becomes easier and easier. The thing is, we should never give up devotional service, because as we it's not a one day thing that can happen overnight. But as we go through, at least for you in your example, you're able to remember, okay, after the fact that, oh, I shouldn't have done that. At least that is happening now, right? And as you advance, what would happen is you will not even go to the stage of shouting. Because what happens in the process of getting angry, we are actually getting our mind is agitated and we are put into anxiety mode, because of which we are not able to perform the devotional activity properly. We waste a lot of time. So what is the point? So some realizations will start trickling upon us. And practicing, with practice, slowly we will be able to overcome the bad habits we have in us. So this is the way. There is always a higher route that we can take, right? I mean, now you started to estimate yourself after the fact. And slowly, what will happen through devotional service is that you will start to even not go that route, and you will start to tolerate something that comes on your way. It's better to tolerate. Why to fight unnecessarily? You may just give it up. So that transformation will happen eventually with devotional service. That is the hope and that is the faith, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji. Krishna will help. Okay. Thank you so much, Mataji, for the wonderful class once again. And it really helps. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranams, Mataji. Mataji, any further questions, comments, realizations?
Thank you so much, Mataji. That was a beautiful question answer session. If anybody has any more questions or comments? Okay, if not, we can end the call. Thank you so much for your association. Thank you all, Matajis, for your participation. Manchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
अनंत कोटि वैष्णव
कोटि
की
वैष्णव की
जय,
जय,
की
राम
श्याम
जय।
प्रसाद की
दास
जय,
की जय, प्रभुपाद की जय।
की
हरे
जय,
जय।
राधिका कस्तूरी माता जी की जय,
जय।
जय माता जी,
हरे
हरे
कृष्णा।
कृष्णा।
हरे
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
So
Hare
much
Krishna
Mataji. Thank you all devotees closing the call. Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्णा।